everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today's video is LOL. Democrats fold election as their cities and states literally burn. And so yes, this is where I'm actually going to talk about the surface level political stuff and the whole shenanigans and everything that's gone on. The DNC is now concluded, and it is really something. You almost would have thought, like, about 9-10 months ago when we witnessed the British election, right, and the left campaigned on a hard left, basically socialist communist platform, pretty much the same social justice stuff that the whole left has gone full bore on in this country, and they were expecting this great victory. And what happened was the biggest blowout election and the biggest loss for basically the left-wing parties since 1933, right? Almost an entire century. Basically the most brutal beating, politically speaking. And I think that's what's about to happen in this country. I think that Trump has masterfully put them into a corner and made them essentially raise up their craziest people as their flag bearers and standard bearers, right, of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar. And but even when we really break it down, Nancy Pelosi is completely addled as well. And anybody who looks up to Chuck Schumer, right, all these cucked liberal men who think that these Democratic politicians are like strong bulwarks of progressive values, it's just so sad and pathetic. The program is so strong in some sense, and how pervasive it is, but on the other hand, it's so weak. The content of the program is so weak that it's like, even when you blast it out to your acolytes and your cult members, it's like it's still not even coherent to make it into their heads, right? Marianne Williamson, it was one of the more wild and entertaining members of the Democratic debates. She described the DNC as like an extended Marriott commercial, right? It's just platitudes and people of color and all these faces together. Look how many different colors we have, but we all think exactly the same, and we're all completely insane. And, they had one chick who was basically self-identified as like a mermaid or something, like a bisexual mermaid. And actual pretty much communism, like social justice communism being pushed. And meanwhile, Trump, is just playing it masterfully. He pardoned Susan B. Anthony because I guess back in the day she got arrested for voting, and they predictably, like clockwork, basically hopped on him and basically chastised him for pardoning Susan B. Anthony. Don't you realize that's what she wanted? She wanted to be arrested. She didn't want to be pardoned. Like, they fell for it. They fell for the trap. And they also chastising her for being pro-life, I guess, which, again, back 100 years ago, there weren't too many people who were pro-murdering babies, right? It wasn't like a big hip fad, And now, like today, where it's not only accepted as a necessary evil, it's promoted as a good. It's promoted as a virtue to have abortions and to basically literally not care at all about the life of the unborn, and to promote the lives of complete degenerates above them, right? Like, I remember even I used to believe in the irony back in the day. Liberals were like, well, pro-lifers that support the death penalty. It's like, yeah, you get your chance in life to do right by your fellow man, and to not cause crime, and to not hurt people, and to not basically, like kill and maim and rape people. That's kind of part of the rules, right? Not even the implicit social contract. It's literally the basis of called criminal law. And they basically, like, what was I saying? My body, my choice, right, implies that the baby's body is their body. It's not. When you engage in an act, right, you create a new human. You have now created a new body through which a new soul has come into and is inhabiting, right? And you don't get to just roll back the clock and pretend like there's no agency for your actions, right? I'm ashamed of how much I used to believe in the liberal program. But again, for me back in the day, it was mainly anti-war. I knew unequivocally that the wars were bullshit, and therefore it was de facto a moral position to be against them. And I still feel that way. I'm still against all the wars. I might have become a little bit more hip to the necessary conflict of some form with China, but again, that conflict does not have to take the place of a war. And in fact, it can't. As I've covered for many years, the deeper kind of geopolitical chessboard, it belies, it's because of the existence of nuclear weapons. We can't have open total war because we'll kill everybody, and that would ruin the game for everybody, including the people who control, the various civilizations and societies. So there is a genuine conflict. There is a genuine resolution that needs to be found, and that is very much an energetic conflict, an etheric conflict. It is a subject of agreements more so than necessarily who has the most guns and battleships and whatnot. That being said, it's like negotiations are definitely of a different level of seriousness when both sides are prepared to go to conflict, actual conflict. It's again, strength is necessary for your own survival and willpower to exist just in a peaceful sense, right? It's again, concealed carry doesn't mean that you go out waving a gun around. It basically means that just you live your life peacefully, and if anyone wants to bring it to that level with you, you are prepared to respond. And that is, again, why even with the buildup of the military with Trump, it's still, speak softly but carry a big stick type thing. I'm cool with having, the best and newest weapons, but I just don't want them really ever to be used. And I think that, realistically, in general, there's better things we could be spending our money on, right? Nation built at home, not in these other countries. Stop giving billions of dollars to other countries and bring them back and build this country, right? If we're just going to print money in modern monetary theory, aka magic money tree, why don't we just actually build things that will have tangible value, even if, when, and after the financial system implodes and fiat money comes to an end as we know it, which will happen inevitably at some point. And, again, as I've discussed, I think they know that at some level. That's why there just doesn't really seem to be any sort of regard for the future. And, whenever people have been predicting this or that doomsday for years and years and years, but it's like, everything seems improbable until it happens, right? It happens gradually and then suddenly. And we don't really fully understand the mechanics of this world and what, underlies the cycles of natural disasters and catastrophes. And so we're always kind of operating on the premise that the end of the world could always happen, but it isn't necessarily likely to happen on any particular day. However, as we move into, the grand solar minimum over the ensuing years and decades, the amount of energy that's coming into the planet, there's going to be significant changes in what was the normal climate, which is very much involved with the electrostatic dynamics of the planet. And, as suspicious observers, and, they've showed on their channel, the fluids within the Earth can absolutely move up and down. They can go against gravity when they're subjected to an electric force, electric charge. So when you think about all the water underneath the Earth, and it's not exactly all water, it's other substances, but the point is the same, that when an electric charge is applied to this water that's down in the rocks, it literally it'll rise up to meet the charge, right? So water will literally rise up into the Earth from the deep recesses when subjected to those electrical charges. And, lightning is increasing. We're seeing massive increases of long light. Like, they now set 2 new records for the longest lightning bolt as far as duration. 18 seconds, 15-second lightning bolt, just illuminating the entire sky over the course of hundreds of miles. And so the climate is changing again, but all the really important things, aren't being discussed. All they talk about is climate change because of carbon dioxide, which isn't actually happening at all. And, we now have in this state, in California, it's burning. The entire west coast of the United States is literally burning. And this is not because, carbon dioxide and global warming. It's because, actually, it is because of global warming, which doesn't exist, because of these commies in this state have implemented this, basically Green New Deal light. There is a mandate in place from Jerry Brown, signed in 2018, for California to be 100% renewable energy by 2045. And that is just insane, right? So PG&E, the utility, is bankrupt. And that's basically because they, caused several fires that burned down whole towns and villages, and, hundreds of people have died. And they are now liable for, as of 2011, when it happened on the East Coast, a tree fell on the transmission lines, and it caused the massive blackout for millions of people in the Northeast. And so as a result of that, they passed a law that made the utilities liable for those sort of incidents, and basically put the onus on them to keep their lines clear and to perform that preventive work. And so that was actually my previous job down in LA, when we were living down there in Long Beach before we moved up to this part of California. And absolutely, they have whole consulting teams. They're trying, basically to make sure the lines are clear. But they don't even know how old some of these transmission towers and lines are at a certain point, over a century. And so it takes a massive amount of capital to maintain these lines, and to go out there and clear the trees and to inspect all these things. And, they would have that money, right? They're a massive utility. However, they're also compelled by the state, by the mandate, by the law, to invest in renewable energy for climate change. And at the same time, there's all these other political incentives at place. They want cheap electricity and invest in, global warming technologies and clear the lines for the fire, right? They're trying to pull it in three different directions, and it can't be done. And, for the liberals and the commies, that's not a problem, because they can just wish reality into existence and just, make things up and pretend that it's real. That's the basis of their entire worldview and civilization. Just take a look at the daytime presentations during the Democratic Convention, and you can see that, reality doesn't exist to these people. They're all basically useless, even the most powerful among them, which, Biden is a perfect example of just that high-level grift and just career politician who has literally not done anything in their entire career to make the world or the country a better place, but basically have just grifted off the system the whole time while flapping their lips and making noises that they think people will like. And again, for a long time it's worked, but I think it is the time for that as effective modality of politics is over for the main part. And that people can see through, right? There's only so much you can tell people that Joe Biden is competent mentally and, isn't having, signs of dementia and Alzheimer's. People can see it with their own eyes. It's exactly what they tried to do with Hillary 4 years ago, right? Her health is perfect. Her health is fine. But all these videos are coming out showing her basically bobbling her head. And, then eventually she got thrown like a sack of potatoes into the van at the 9/11 memorial. And talk about a bad time to look like, a person who's basically weak and infirm right at the 9/11 memorial. Again, people, they're motivated by base instinctual, subconscious drives. And for people to see that, on the 9/11 memorial, that their potential new coronated queen is completely incapable of doing the job and potentially, dealing with medical conditions, life-threatening medical conditions, that's even for people who might have liked Hillary Clinton and liked the idea of having her as president, probably at some point said, all right, she's literally telling us that our jobs are never coming back, and basically she thinks we're all deplorable, and she also basically at the same time can't govern at all. It's at a certain point the perfect storm came together for Trump, and the same thing is happening now. And again, they think Trump is stupid, but it's he just became a billionaire and masterfully, took the presidency, and now basically has achieved literally more than any other president in history in the span of 4 years. And, again, not to say that all of those things are things that I agree with, but as I said 4 years ago, I'd never expected Trump to be ideologically, logically, philosophy, consistent. I expected him to be effective and pragmatic and to make compromises and to work around, the structures that have been set up against him. And I think that he has done fairly well. And it is my great hope that when Trump blows out Biden in this election, that we will really see kind of Trump unleashed, and we will see a lot of these indictments become unsealed. Again, we're already right in the thick of it. This is not something we're waiting for. People are waking up faster and greater than I have ever seen in my life. This is like Pizzagate times 3. And it's all the more obvious now because, again, with Netflix and their cuties, basically sexualizing 11-year-old girls. I mean, people are waking up and they can see what's going on. And, the more that the left wants to actually circle the wagons around that degenerate bullshit, the more that the average just parent at home, ones that consider themselves to be liberal, go, okay, this is not something I can get on board with. We said it was okay if you wanted to get married. We said it was okay, and we agreed that people didn't, deserve not to be beaten and harassed, for something that they do in their private life. But when it's all public, it's a very different situation. When you say that marriage doesn't exist and that gender doesn't exist and that there's no biological difference between men and women and trans men can play in women's sports or whatnot, you just really lose people who would have otherwise been on board, right? When people are strapped in leather and swinging their dicks around in public and just performing all this degeneracy, I mean, it's not good. And people can see that it's not good. And when they realize that their children are being indoctrinated with this in school, and again, being taught that anal sex is an effective contraceptive in second grade onward, this isn't even about people just voting Republican. It's about people waking up to the profound evil that has infected their society. And in fact, its highest levels, and the people that they esteemed so much within the media and politics are actually the most guilty and culpable people in the entire thing. And that is, it's hard for the normies to understand, but again, when they're faced with it right in front of their eyes, it's undeniable. I mean, there are people who will deny it. It is absolutely amazing the extent to which people can just nullify their own perception of reality. This is what the brainwashing achieves. This is what all the liberals in my family are completely engaged in. Is just willfully shutting their eyes to what they could otherwise see as obvious and filtering it all through this program that tells them essentially what to see and what they are seeing. And, again, it's like Plato's allegory of the cave. It's, people watching shadows on the wall, and they're being told what the shadows are, but they don't really have any idea what any of these words or concepts, or things mean. And, but there are some who, escape the cave and go up and see, right, the sunlight, and the sun is very blinding at first, and it's very hard to see, but then your eyes acclimate, and then you're able to see what the light is showing you, and everything. You just see the natural forms, right? And you know what they are. You don't need someone to explain to you what the trees are, what the animals are, what any of these things in the natural world are, because you have that connection and you can see in that light. But as long as people are in that darkness and hiding in a cave, which is an emotional, spiritual, psychological state and condition, it's really a moot point to discuss any of these type of people achieving anything productive. And again, this is the fundamental flaw of the left and of the liberal, commie, progressive authoritarians, is that they're fundamentally incompetent. And you have to they have to make some compromises to make this whole thing sound reasonable enough to the average person, because it's those average people that are the competent ones, right? Think Seth Rich. Seth Rich was probably one of the competent people, and then he realized that his supported candidate, Bernie Sanders, was getting robbed by the system, and decided, I'm just going to go ahead and leak these files. I'm going to transfer it to a thumb drive, and then I'm going to give it to WikiLeaks. And, that turned out to be his undoing, as many of us are already aware, It was almost like, Pizzagate was the most accessible version of this whole notion that elite satanic pedophilia as a means of control and blackmail in secret societies type, situations. Like, that was the most accessible version of this information at the time. Now we, again, have that times 3 at least. With, Jeffrey Epstein is now basically and completely hammered into the public consciousness. Ghislaine Maxwell is now in custody. Wayfair is being exposed. The CEO stepped down. People are waking up to the pedophilia. Netflix is in hot water for promoting it. And, it's just very obvious at a certain point. And people couldn't see it because they were just closing their eyes and they were believing what they were told and they were afraid. And they've just been indoctrinated for their entire lives to believe these things. From the medical side, too, people are totally losing faith. Not just in the COVID vaccine, but in vaccination as a modality, in these doctors and their perceived authority, and realizing that it is a joke. It is an illusion, and they have no authority. They just have the perception of authority. But, it's what Tyrion Lannister said, the perception of power is power. So, which, again, is a very metaphysical and magic conception, but it's absolutely the basis of reality. And so, at a certain point, again, why I continually focus, I bring up the bad things that are happening, but I just always want to drive home to you guys in this video that it is keeping your morale in place that will lead us to victory no matter what we are facing, right? Your virtue and your attitude are absolutely pinnacle. And of course, you should be learning, you should be staying abreast of the developments, you should be able to have conversations with people and not run away and not get mad and blow up at people, but at a certain point, there's a time for peaceful dialogue and there's a time for something more, so to speak. And again, it's not necessarily about violence, but, again, speak softly and carry a big stick. We're not going to politely ask Hollywood to stop being, basically satanic pedophiles. If we have to chase them down and hound them and cancel them the way they have tried to cancel all of us who just want to speak the truth and have our tiny little YouTube channels and social media outlets, but Facebook is now banning all groups that are mentioning any of this. They are in absolute damage control panic mode. And, again, they try and make it seem like we're so outnumbered and outgunned and, basically we're all is lost, black pills, for everyone. But, that is the perception of power is power. And if we could see with clear eyes, we would realize that we are closer to victory than we have ever been in the last 10 to 12,000 years. And it's a very exciting time. And many good things are happening. And I really feel like the Democrats have exposed, they're basically folding this election. I felt that way when Biden became the nominee. It's like he's not going to win. They can't even make this, we can't even say 2 sentences without basically, forgetting what he's talking about or getting flustered or saying, come on, man. And, and Kamala Harris nobody likes her. Literally, on the left, nobody likes her. Tulsi Gabbard, a wonderful woman, grabbed her weave and tore her down. And is like, if I'm going down, you're going down with me. And, it would be one thing if she was just a corrupt prosecutor who got her start in politics by having some relations with Mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown. But she's just not likable. She's a bobblehead, just like Sarah Palin was, right? I called it when McCain nominated Sarah Palin or chose Sarah Palin as his running mate, and it was like the election's over now. It's over because the people, there's no way that they're gonna vote for McCain and Palin. Same thing right now with Harris and Biden. No one's gonna vote for that. They can try and rig the election, but the amount of people coming out of the woodwork, who haven't been able to blast everyone on social media with their beliefs, but have just been biding their time, and waiting for their chance to speak, they are absolutely, they're going to make their voice known. The silent majority will be heard. And, again, it's never been about Trump being a perfect paragon of morality. It's always been about how do we, in this pragmatic, tactical situation, basically give ourselves the cover to do what we need to do here on the ground. So, yeah, we'll see what happens, but it's great to see the total collapse of it all. and just the joke that the Democrats pose. Again, we have the enemy on our right flank too. We need to always be hip to the neocon aspect and the intent to bring us all back into that cage and that fold. But I'll tell you what, it's not going to happen, brother. Not on my watch, and not on many others' watch. So that's my video today. Talk to you guys again soon. Peace.